solution. Man, know thyself, stop causing more complication. Change your plan. It's time the world leaders come together. Stop trying to destroy one another. Doesn't matter if you're from England or Haiti, America, Iraq, Beijing or Germany, sign the treaty. But this was never meant to be. Man supposed to dwell in harmony. But becomes to shorten his days, cause in his comfort and strife. What a life, what a life, cause in his comfort and strife. What a life, in these times of even. What a life, what a life, cause in his comfort and strife.
Financial friends and family. So the hope, like you forget your people. Once you in power and you move as evil, yeah, the whole place sour. I know that we discover it's 2% that they offer. This is one little thing that I want all you to remember. We've heard of all you. You could do much better. It's going up too high. The cost of living is getting harder. Guys, keep up on the right name. I don't own the rights and the music played. Neither the melody. I'm a man.
Testing 1 2 1 2. Is this test working? Testing. All right. Well, a special good evening to one and all listening and viewing on all of our platforms here. This evening, I am Chris through today's pre-show for the final night of the Star Teams campaign. So as we all know, it is the internal election of the UNC Star Team, and so the seats here are being filled up at the Penal Secondary School, and I can tell you it's an array of yellow. It's a sea of yellow. So far I've seen busloads of UNC activists, and then we are setting just behind me. It is well lit. It is well.
Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry. I thought I should give you a bit of nostalgia inside of it, of course, and to, of course, whether you see me as being biased or not, the fact of the matter is that I like to be as objective as possible in a subjective scenario, because yes, I have a bias for the UNC, and for good cause, for good reason. And I am sure that you too, by now, would have been convinced of that fact, that the only people that can manage the affairs of the country, comparatively speaking, having regard to the consideration of the tragedy that is the Rowley and PNM, both are separate entities in their own right. Because Dr. Rowley has shown that he is separate and apart from it is cataclysmic for Trinidad and Tobago, and that is what, of course, is the reality of Trinidad and Tobago today. And therefore, he could run to Canada. He is needed on the hemispheric and international stage. He could, of course, play peacock, plenty flair, but no depth at the end of the day, because he's a blasted rapscallion. He is a chauvinist and an individual who clearly is so egocentric oriented, is so self-serving and self-centered. The man is a narcissist of unbridled proportion. Anybody knew of him He was humble like pie, pretensively, of course, and he cannot fool anybody. Opinion. My independent senator, Helen Drayton. And I am amazed, but I suppose money not only is the root of, as some would prefer to see money as, but is a tremendous incentive, including for doing wrong. And so, I am surprised that Ventor is still considered to be that one man, and of course, respect, of course, to the fake oil matter when his name was directly involved. He paid no price as yet for, of course, his intervention with respect to that illegal conduct of preempting the shortlist that was on its way to the Parliament for consideration through the President, and of course initiated by the Police Service Commission and Ms. Bliss C. Prasad, the chairman, unilaterally under the obviously influence of this rapscallion that is in public office and in the office of the Prime Minister called Rowley. A total and absolute tragedy for Trinidad and Tobago and our democracy. And he goes off there telegraphing home that somehow he is important on the international scene. A very significant meeting he initiated, but never thought that the on his veil overture by asking for a meeting, and then of course went on a tirade, went on a convoluted verbal odyssey or expedition, saying that someone was in office by not making reference to when he was in office. Let me repeat, by not making reference to when he was in the opposition seat. He comes to the public as Prime Minister, despicable and inhospitable and wicked as it is, and suggesting that he was not opposed when he was in opposition before 2010 or before 2015. Come on, let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Yeah, loud and clear, loud and clear.
Hello.
Yeah, loud and clear, loud
Hello.
and clear.
You hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. I see.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to find out. Right. Right. I want to find out.
Yeah.
Friday when they do a press conference, I want to.
Oh, we have not yet finalized it.
I actually a question. The press conference we have to do. It will be in the morning or in the evening.
Yeah, it will be around after finalize it tomorrow. You will know. Tomorrow I'll finalize it, because the documents that have to be filed, I'm not going with just the pre-action protocol letter. It have to be vetted by certain lawyers that will be looking it over, and they are taking a longer time than I expect. But of course, I have not received any response as yet from Dr. Rowley or his lawyer. So just be patient, and things are going to happen. Even if it takes me until next week, I am going to make certain that I dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Right? So just stay tuned.
Right. Next thing too.
Go ahead.
Right. And then one more thing before I go.
Yes.
So I noticed on the news they were already going to Canada here now talking about the amount of guns they find and crime out of control. When I watch a thing there, the only thing that will come into my mind is he will create all them conditions.
Of course. Of course.
Somehow, so that we're able to bring the handout. And you want to think I can get out of it?
That's right. That's right. That's the idea.
All of a sudden, and them only forget I said I rusty gun.
Yes, indeed, and you are so correct. All of that, and mind you, don't take it out your mind, because this man is a total madman. He's a maverick. He's unpredictable. He like quicksand, and of course he like quicksilver as well. He's extremely choleric. He believe to himself that, listen, back in Trinidad, he is seen as being absolved of all of his iniquities by, of course, telegraphing back to Trinidad that he is, of course, rubbing shoulders with Trudeau, letting us know that no one has any mercy on him and for him, and that when the time comes, as the Tobagonians, where he came from, showed mercilessness, well, in Trinidad, rest assured, and therefore Trinidad and Tobago, because I noticed that he is taking notes. I noticed that he starts to sweat now when he is talking, because he is attempting to convince himself alone now, and not, of course, the audience who have already has been a consummate failure. But they will tolerate if for, of course, the for the occasion itself, which may be a significant one, or a coverage, or maintaining the position that they would have been given by, of course, Rowley and his, I should say, his mendacious and, of course, a deceptive bunch who, of course, engage in criminal behavior at every opportunity in the form, of course, of deception, fraud, fakeness, and, of course, insincerity that is unprecedented and Tobago. How the hell only could tolerate a man calling your prime minister every day a rapist and a pedophile? How is that possible? How would a fella go and, of course, provide and serve him with a pre-action protocol letter? How? And, of course, in the fullness of time, the court documents will be, the complication is that you have to do it well, and therefore I have to, of course, exams. So that's the only reason that the entire process is being kept back. In other words, before I could have walked into the court in the registry and register and, of course, file my documents. Now it has to go online, and, of course, the lawyers and they would have been given special preference. I am doing this, of course, once in a while, and in being a lawyer, you would appreciate that lawyers will get special consideration and therefore greater access. So I have two to my assistants, and I will be meeting with them between tomorrow and Friday. So whether the press conference is Friday or on Monday or Tuesday of next week, the most important thing is to file the documents. The press conference can come anytime after. So I trust that that will bring some relief to some who are very anxious as to the pre-action protocol letter was in fact delivered. That is clear. That is on record. The other part of it really is the filing of the documents, which is the most significant, to start a court action against Dr. Rowley for calling me a liar. Would have been at minimum, or should I say maximum, 16 years of age when he interfered with her, and he was a teacher at the time. And then all over the place, espoused in government, the PNM clearly is public enemy number one, and they are the greatest threat to Trinidad and Tobago at this time. And one hopes and pray that will never occur again, and that the UNC and Kamala Prasad Bissessa, when they get into government, certainly they do. And we have a duty to give them a constitutional majority so that they will be able, of course, to ensure this is the objective. And we have a duty and responsibility to, of course, to deliver that, at least for ourselves, this generation and future generations, and including unborn ones. That is what I mean, future generations. So people, that being as it may, I promised last night that I will, of course, look at the OAS matter. You see, Rowley was bumping the gum in point, and all of it was another combination of the fake, false pieces of paper he called emails, a combination of that, and his conduct preceding, before of Petrotrin, because his name was being called in the fake call matter. You will see his demeanor, you will see his conduct, you will see all of the elements, body language, etc., that we saw before, and that therefore we are to be fools, or will be fools, or be taken. So let's go straight, of course, to OAS, and I want to say one time, I want to say one time, that OAS, that company out so extensively, but of course attempting to indict and to incriminate the UNC for wrongdoing, I want to say that it was a question of spitting in the sky and falling in Rowley's face. He spit in the sky and falling in his face. The first thing you must know, subjected to, was never in bankruptcy. They took preemptive action because there was a scandal back home. And I want to tell you as well, in terms of going to court, as Rowley is now saying these days, because he is refuted by the arbitration coming out from London. So he now changed his narrative. He moved from, of course, a bankrupt company that they were in for judicial consideration, or they were, of course, engaged in bankruptcy protection as we know it here. But of course, in the context of Brazil, the Brazil legal jurisdiction and that of New York, because they did file there as well, or consideration, but there's a specific term for it, but the prefix, of course, is judicial. You'll get it during the course of this video audio confirmation, ratification and dismissal of the lies that Rowley is engaged in. Incompetence because of the sum involved that the government now have to pay OAS. Mind that appealing in the local courts has no impact on the agreement in the original signed document. That is, arbitration must be the final arbiter, the decider of who is wrong and who is right. In London, Dr. Rowley and them just gone mad by filing a matter in this court, and the court has the audacity. I'm sure that OAS appeal, because the lower court here is saying that, of course, the government has a case, so if certain evidence were not presented or whatever it is, I don't know. But I'm sure that the appeal court, I could see them saying that the lower court or Trinidad and Tobago has no jurisdiction in this matter. I will be surprised if that is the opposite. And at any rate, the NIDCO, the government, on behalf of the government, and the OAS had agreed that they will go to the contractual content of that arrangement, and the arbitrators said that the government breached the contract. That is what Rowley is trying to escape. The Rowley administration, when they came into the government, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why before I go further. The contract had nothing to do with a special clause, and on the 4th of the Friday before the elections of September 2015 and all that hogwash. That is ambulatory verbalization of a incongruent nature. It makes no sense. Nonsense. But that is typical of Rowley. That is why I told you that when you see him, what he'll do is give you the history. And then, of course, if not, obviously not on Friday. No, I can give you it tomorrow, because tomorrow is Thursday. Tomorrow night, I'll give you, of course, his recent position in the opening of that leg of the highway between Point Fortin and San Fernando. The man is simply toxic, evil, and he is a spontaneous and habitual liar. And I want to, because much of it is things that he would have spoken already in Parliament, outside of Parliament, and of course, like herds, they have the herd mentality. They will listen and try to, of course, deny what anybody else say, even though, of course, Rowley does not provide any facts, does not provide any proof, because the documents are there. The report of the arbitration is there. Why you think they're in court now? Is because the arbitration said $1 billion must be given back to OAS that they got as a consequence of the frugal and the public interest imposition of a clause in that arrangement that caused OAS to put up bonds. That is what bonds, that's their bonds. Specific. If they were allowed to complete the contract and not the pernicious conduct and recklessness and ruthlessness and attempting, of course, to show that somehow there was something untoward in that contract. See, today we would have not had to even consider that $1 billion because the project would have been completed and the OAS would have retained their bonds, and Rowley didn't have to want to have his cake and eat it at the same time. You did not pay them. You continue not to pay them. They send you a letter saying that they are slowing down operations. You continue not to pay them because you are Bajan. You somehow could take government and ruthlessly and recklessly and without any shame and come for international, regional and commercial principles and contractual obligations and unilateral necromancy in it too, you know. Yes, necromancy in it too. I didn't find it tonight, but I'll find it. The man said, when he was talking, I think, to a Faizabad meeting, he said that he was in the bathroom. You know, he loves to say in the bathroom, just as how he said he was in the bathroom when, of course, call him, and he didn't know who was on the next line. That time, of course, we know he orchestrated the whole thing with his friend, who, of course, is the head and the leader and the owner of Naikwan, the same entity that after Rowley cut the ribbon, 2 weeks afterwards it blew up, and not once but twice. That is the nature of this criminal that we call Rowley, pretending to be a prime minister. I mean, it's the most despicable could do to us as a people. I am not concerned now with Rowley again, you know. I'm concerned with the PNM as an institution and what they have done to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Disgracing us with a political cabal that is prepared, of course, to nip away at the carcass or at the skeleton for whatever remnants of flesh that it may have, because they are greedy for power. So they will do anything. So that is what the PNM has evolved into, and that is a despicable and a very inauspicious moment for Trinidad and Tobago, and for that party that would have had, right or wrong, tremendous history behind it in the context of Trinidad and Tobago. So let me tell you what transpired. So the OAS arbitration between Trinidad, NIDCO, and that of OAS after the arbitration was for a breach of contract. They simply refused to pay the people. And the other element that you must know why is because Rowley and they somehow like to generate this square peg and round hole logic and enigmatic common sense. You can't understand why such big men are so damn stupid. You cannot tell me that you know you ain't pay the people and them. You frustrate the contract. And because you were telling the people before 2015 that this deal between OS and, of course, the then government, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, was one mired in corruption and so on. You know the old talk, just as how they told us that the country was running on fumes, and it turned out that the money that Kamala and Dave left is what saved us up to today. The money in the Heritage and Civilization Fund, that in the reserve, and that, of course, in excess liquidity now, and as you have seen it, of course, in the last budget, and you will see it continuing. They were turning around. Well, last time, of course, we dismissed that. Because when they were talking about turning around, the opposite was the case, as is the case now, when, of course, as I said last night, they will abuse even fortune. It was fortuitous that they got $8 billion just so because of the Ukraine-Russian war, and they flipped it away, and now they're talking and they were talking seriously now about, of course, property tax, and of course increase in electricity and water rate, and the selling of the port, and the selling of Labre, and we can go on and on, assets after assets, in order, of course, to meet basic requirements of expenditure. That is the imperative and the obligation of the government. Let's not waste time with that. So in the final analysis, I'm telling you, at the end of this exercise, I want you to understand that at the end of it all is all the shenanigans and all of the hyperboles and all of the grandstanding and all of the hogwash that he would be talking loud simply because he has the position of prime minister, and therefore the media will, of course, pay attention during the course of the local government election, and they are incensed. They say Rowley is a total ass, but of course they have an obligation to bring the information that it now is no longer have the power and the gusto that it once had. I talk about OWTU and of course its leader, who of course has been totally and absolutely disgraced and downgraded. Yes, I talk about Roger. Yes, indeed. And Vince, I'm sure people, even the Calypsonians, he can't convince who were rooting for him. He certainly couldn't convince again. Jack Warner made the most profound statement. He said, this is Trinidad and Tobago. Fali ruling Tobago, Kamala Prasad Bissessa ruling Trinidad, and Rowley ruling the and. So he was so incensed. Rowley was so annoyed about that statement that he mentioned Warner, then put Warner on a plane to send him to the United States. He would do it if it wasn't for certain circumstance. But I say to you, Jack Warner, well done. Takes a person like you to come up with that kind of creative but poignant and cognitively clear analogy. Yes, cognitively clear analogy. So well done to you, my friend. I spoke to him about, of course, the pre-action protocol letter, and I expect that he will probably do it in his newspaper as well. But that is just one aspect of it. But let's get on with the proving that from the beginning, Rowley concocted the lies just as emails and ruthless attack, unprovoked, on the UNC once again for something that he invoked, that's something he did, just as the fake oil. But all of the Southwestern Peninsula, all 65,000 persons, directly, indirectly, fence line and directly, and business people have to now endure, and now that area of Trinidad and Tobago, that geographic space, is now a ghost town because Rowley tried to use the dispelling or the destruction of Petrotrin and the lives of 65,000 persons on the Southwestern Peninsula, embarrass Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley under the PNM and all of his minions and opportunistic political parasites that he has coalesced into an enterprise called the criminal enterprise of the PNM, a mafia syndicate. You just have to watch at Balize House and see that one conclusion. And mind you, I got him again. Remember, I talked to you about, of course, Jusamco, and it's, of course, pouring concrete on the basement of the of Balize House. During the local government elections, he said not one contractor that worked for the government work on Balize House. Well, I'm going to tell you about that after. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor. Yes.
Yeah, Lennox.
Yes.
Yes. Right. So I want to intervene here, sir. So I said, so yeah, I said, what's going on? I said, I think the comments for all you, I said, next year we're going to have solid shooting. All they intend to do. What they asked him, I said, what they intend to do? All you going to tell them to get out? You got to have he said somebody come and keep on me saying,
and somebody else come and keep some meeting again, and people like, no, people have to accept or come in, after accept or come in, and they say, why does all they come together and tell, oh, you know, you not know what I know?
Yeah.
He say, boy, he say, we can't come together and do that, boy. So Lennox, like I said again, Rowley went Ghana, about video where they turn it on, because we went Ghana, and these people them pay him sit down 3 times and they spend him on 3 times. That man do something to the people that Trinidad. Something spiritually this man do, because when Kamala was giving milk and money, the people was up in arms. And right now, Rowley giving people battery water. And nobody
caloric, yes.
That this is something spiritual here. So yeah. I don't want to say these people any more stupid anymore. Yeah, it's spiritual, because you just only know when you're under spiritual attack when you come out right, you know. But when you're under that influence, you don't know nothing, because whatever it is controlling you, they have the upper hand on you. And that is why I see playing out there, because this man telling me them can't do nothing again but accept the fate that's coming. And when I tell him, boy, or that to tell him, or that to come together and tell him, man, we to get off, they can't do that, because why? The key ingredients here is coming together. And Rowley and them know that, divide and conquer. But when they come together, like the ants and them, you know, when people pay attention to how the ants just work, all of them does know the role, all of them just come together to do what they have to do to get the daily chores done. And we more greater than the ants and them, but the ants and them could come together to move mountains in their world. Them ants and them is build a raft to cross over water. When I sit down and rain fall and flood all the place. All them simple things, and you telling me these people who say they have so much of brain, they can't say, but then we come together around it. This thing is evil. Rowley is an evil individual. So right now, look, I just waiting for you to do your thing, let the whole world know what it is we dealing with for the past 8 years I'm counting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And you made some points there, and of course, whilst you were talking, I added some, but I met a good friend who is an employee of WASA at 12 years. He's 12 years there, employed there. And I raised the same issue, and he said that it really is not them. It had too much managers, so they ain't coming for them. I say, you stop there. So I just want to reinforce what you're saying, that there are those who are in denial until it comes. The same thing happened with Petrotrin because of the way that the government will do it. They wouldn't tell you that they come in for your throat. They will divide and rule, as they say, not just in terms of who they're targeting, but also their lyrics, their narrative, their overtures. They will say that, look, one fella, for example, a cleaner getting so much $1,000, that is a psychological divide and rule strategy. So a fella who probably working in a government office or working in a private sector, oblivious of course to the importance of oil, is called black gold, and the dangers involved in terms of working in that environment, all of that. But of course is a commodity that is in huge demand, and thus the rewards for persons employed there and engaged in that kind of business, whether be directly or indirectly or providing some kind of service, will certainly be high paid. But of course, Rowley and they will try to obfuscate and to prevent that from being a factor, but they will only look at the fact that the person is only a cleaner and they getting 10,000 a month. Nah, you in the government service and getting your 3,000, or your private sector and you're serving coffee and so on and getting maybe a 3,000. You will, because they would have of course left out some of the elements, some of the parameters, information that would cause a person in the oil industry who may be a cleaner to be getting much more than the average person around. But the intention, of course, is to divide and rule psychologically and make the people accept to, of course, eliminate all of them because they are now persona non grata to the rest of the society and they are bleeding the rest of the society. That kind of talk. But you go now at Heritage or at Paria. They wouldn't even want to tell you what is the salary of the chairman of Paria. That is part of the that has saturated and has become idiosyncratically part and parcel of the Rowley administration, and they seem to have a predilection and a bottomless pit of concocting these situations that turns out to be a tragedy for those who are the unesoteric, those who are not well schooled or understand will always get entrapped by that level of argument because they would have been very eclectic, selective in terms of the argument that they are purporting or proposing, and utilizing, of course, their office as part of that charade in order to make you and to convince you. And don't tell me you don't have an example that you know of. Example of the flyers and the handbills and the pamphlets that were being circulated purporting to be coming from the Commissioner of Evaluations, and there was a penalty on it. If you don't fill it out, you're getting a 3 months or a 20,000, I believe, or no, 5,000 fine, or both a jail and a fine, all of that. And when it was tested in court, it turned out to be another scheme of this government, just to say $100 bills and say that people are money laundering with that, and that they are using the Trinidad and Tobago $100 bill to engage in the drug trade, all of that kind of hogwash, and have people taking their mattress money out. I mean, these people are conmen to the hilt. I cannot overemphasize how dangerous these people are to Trinidad and Tobago. And they go home comfortably and sleep, and come the next day having concocted some other scheme, because that is their raison d'etre, that is their reason for living, concocting schemes that has no relevance to the improvement of the quality of life and standard of living of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and augmenting, of course, the coffers, and the broadening, of course, the economic employment can take place and people could survive in this place. No, they keep emasculating, but of course they have a limitless, what I consider to be tomb, a limitless tomb, a vault of deception. That's what they do. And as I was telling you with respect to necromancy, since the fella mentioned that, and I said it, maybe that is why he was, of course, motivated to call in on that question. Well, it was Rowley who said that one day he was in the bathroom. Of course, I gave you the story with Donald Trump and, of course, Naikwan and the blowing up of everything. Because coming to the end of it, I want to tell you what happens when people nasty their hands, when they engage in black magic and they talk that kind of talk, especially if you are the hem of people's affairs and that you are incompetent and that you are a criminal. What happens? So he's on record, he's on public record. Rowley said that he came out of the bathroom and he had this proclivity, this compunction, this desire to call the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Energy to, yeah, what I tell you? Yes, Rowley said that he had this compunction. You know, he had a dream. He came out in the bathroom and something telling him, get the file of OAS. And here what he said afterwards, I think it was in Faizabad. He then said, listen, it's a good thing, because when I get the file, the OAS was about to leave the country and abandon everybody. And something about an excavator, I can't remember that, the last excavator or something like that. They were packing up to leave. And he was able, of course, to preempt that, because they were asking for money. In other words, whilst they were packing up to leave. That is what this son of a gun say in public. Whilst they were packing up to leave. Whereas the evidence in that particular London-based arbitration say that the people and them were waiting. The UNC came out of office in 2015. They were owing them money. You, as a coming in government, you had a duty to look at it, and it reached a point where they told her, in no certain terms, they wrote it to the engineer on the project saying, listen, we are slowing down operations because you are owing us over 50-something million US dollars. Yeah, over 50-something million dollars and counting. If it's me, and having regard to what they were saying on the campaign trail, that is enough. Because they want to manifest, as we have seen, manifest what they were saying on the campaign trail. Otherwise, they know that their credibility, they could withstand everything else. But you see, that campaign trail on significant things such as corruption and accusing the UNC, and they had to find a way to say that that deal with OAS and UNC was corrupt, rather than paying the people and continuing, of course, incrementally or working out an arrangement so that they could continue on the project. Pay the people and them, because they want you and I to believe that what they were saying on the campaign trail was correct. And today we know something totally different, some of which confessed by Rowley only last week. Only last week he confessed. We didn't know. Oh, they played down that it was a Manning administration that brought OAS into the country, connected to that particular project. And according to him, the government wanted to pay $3 billion, and everybody else who bidded more than $3 billion. So therefore, they decided to go back out to tender. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. And I will tell you why. You see, because he was studious, Rowley was studious not to mention a fundamental factor was either a delay or a postponement. And that is, Rowley never said it, and we have a duty to say it. And that is, Manning called election early. Manning called election early. The election was 2 years earlier than legally or constitutionally due. That was the reason. You have buffoon Sinanan in that same thing saying, the PNM in a fit, of course, of opportunism. A fit of opportunism. Trying to put a square peg in a wrong hole scenario. So he said, we have, of the PNM, would want to postpone major decisions like that if it is on the cusp of an election. It was never on the cusp of an election when the decision was made to, of course, do the feasibility and, of course, invite tenders. It was never. Nobody expected Manning to call an early election, so they had 2 years more. And therefore, not 2 years, all of the things that Rowley say and dunderheaded simpleton Sinanan trying to make opportunism of a situation of moral and ethical. But you, on the cusp of an election, you had tenders go out, and an election coming up. You damn fool, Sinanan. You put out tenders for that highway. Election was coming up. I think it would have been the year before. Sinanan. So it's obvious that no government knowing full well that they are in that position with one of the largest projects in the country, an election, to even issue tenders, even invite tenders. Nobody knew that Manning would have called the elections, people. That is what Rowley is trying to avoid. We must say it categorically and without fear of contradiction, and knowing full well that would have affected any kind of efforts to commence the construction of that highway before 2010. They feel that we are asses. So you did all of that, and then call back, and nobody, because you wanted to save taxpayers' money, according to Rowley. The opportunistic political parasites that they are, but in the Rowley case, of course, a total political combo, a vulture of unprecedented dimension. That is what transpired. So obviously it would appear, if you didn't know that election was called earlier, 2 years earlier than it was due. Rowley and say that. And don't tell me you don't know that. Rowley don't know that. He was inside of the belly of the whale. So don't tell me that you don't know. It's a deliberate lie, just as the fake emails. That's the point I'm making. And for the first time I see him sweating profusely. They probably had to bring some kind of refrigerator. Instead of closing the refrigerator door, close he in it. And the consequences, whether you get frozen Rowley at the end of it, I'm sure nobody would mind. But the fact of the matter is, that level of deception and lies, I mean, it's unbecoming. There can be no question that the election called earlier, and that is what prevented, of course, the conclusion, going back out of tenders, etc., because the election was upon you. Nobody expected Manning to call elections that early, because you had 2 years to put everything in place. And then, of course, Sinanad went on with his buffoonery to say that when the UNC came into government, they engaged OAS. Rowley, body from Brazil, went to Johannesburg, and of course followed a particular minister. Well, of course they're talking about Jack Warner and so on. And weeks afterwards, OAS got the contract. Well, Rowley, you see in others that which is in you. You're con man. You ascribing to the UNC and Jack Warner what you will do. But my common sense is, if they see that was a project that was up and ready and willing to go, and that the PNM did everything in place, according to him, they may not have had all of the land acquisition, but they would have had sufficient state land, I'm sure, to, of course, consider. But at any rate, it was for that new government to decide, or let damn fast to say that it was on the cusp of the a particular election, that some clause was amended. You're damn fast. They were the ones in office, just as how you were in office. And a third of the budget was about Tobago, because there was a THA election that you're desperate to win. You went to the parliament and increased the number of seats there by 3, utilizing your minuscule 22 seats, and get the EBC to conspire with you. A tragic disruption of our democratic process and undermining, and at the same time impugning the integrity of that institution for fair and free elections. You're telling me about? What you're telling me about? You're damn fast for you saying that they should have How the hell they are in government, and if they decided that on the cusp of the election, whether it's the 4th, whether it's the 5th, whether it's the 3rd, whether it's the 2nd, before the elections of 2015, hold your tail. That is their decision to make. They were still in government. Don't use that as some kind of a reason when you yourself exhibit that kind of behavior over and over and over. We saw it, of course, in the 2020 elections. There were contracts all over the place, and everybody that wanted a contract, contracts that weren't even touched, they get paid for. That is what the audit is saying in Tobago. So that's just a microcosm of what would have transpired in 2020 here, in spite of the fact that there was of course a COVID engagement, because we heard of a number of, and I'm not going to impugn or in any way sully anybody on this stage at this stage, because we are looking at the evidence, but some of the information is that there were a couple of slush funds taking place all over the place, and one particular senior member of the party in office were engaged and manipulating, of course, and buying votes in 2020, because the place was in lockdown. So of course you had very little movement, and therefore they had free reign to, of course, exercise their nefarious and evil, politically avarice agenda. And so they did. Now that the place is open up and we've seen the truth, Tobago was the first stage. Then of course the local government elections, with Kamala Prasad Bisesa going to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council insisting that we have local government elections in this country, rather than utilizing your tenuous majority to, of course, postpone it to December. And the die has been cast. You could say what you want. So what I'm telling you again, that this disingenuous, this rapscallion, this evil, this wicked man never told us that election was called early, and this buffoon called, of course, Sinanan, a total dunderhead, non-entity, cognitive decline, and cerebral deficient individual, comes to us and tell us that it's because of the integrity of the PNM and the election was too close, so they didn't bother, of course, to pursue. Hold your tail. Hold your tail. Who are looking fool with that? Nobody. They never thought that we would have been able to get that on and courtesy the corridor transformation. It's only here you could get that. But let's get some videos going. Let's get some historical events going. I think it's about time. Right? You will be entertained, and you will be, of course, in some instances, surprised, amazed, flummoxed, and in a state of total enigma that these fellas could stretch their minds to such evil when they could easily, productively direct their minds to the development of Trinidad and Tobago in a solid and sustainable way. But they simply does not have that, simply because birds of feather flock together, and in their DNA they are total and absolute political criminals. Let's go straight.
We terminated OAS in July of this year after some level of difficulty. And now, to date, I'm happy to report to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we have recovered, to date, $671 million.
You talked about OAS. All I want to say about that is, okay.
Of course, that was, of course, Dr. Rory's sidekick, boasting that they recovered money, etc. And of course, Budgetoray in the parliament at the time. So we are talking historical. So let's get the facts out there, man. So listen to Budgetoray in response, because they beat in the chest, because they had concocted a story similar to the emails that turned out, of course, 3 years later to be fake. Same kind of modus operandi. Go all over the world and say that some clause, and that it's supposed to be illegal. But of course, condition was take the money, go and do what you have to do. But remember, if we decide in favor of OAS, you have to pay it back. Now they have to pay it back. He come with all kinds of different stories again. But at that time, he was saying that they went bankrupt. Full stop. Listen.
So you didn't like the contract. You feel that we should have done something. The road was built. They went bankrupt, etc. Did you not use triggers in the system that was established to get your $671 million? Wasn't it built into the system that had been negotiated that you would get those six? Would you have been able to call on the bank? Would Citibank have given you the money without quarrel? Would the other banks
hit them, Budgetoray, hit them, Bo, hit them, Bo.
Would you have had the means to go to court and win the money had not these things been built into the arrangement at the time?
That's how they get the money. Because the UNC was concerned, as has always been and has demonstrated their love and concern for the people. And therefore, they will not do anything, or put another way, they will do everything to protect the public interests. So they make them put up bonds. And here Rowley confess. This week gone, or last week, you would believe that he never said that, and you might blame me that I somehow making his voice a song as making somebody else's voice a song like his, because there's no way he could have said that, having said what he said last weekend. Having said what he said last weekend, you wouldn't believe. But let's go straight to it. Let's go straight to it.
So let us not sensationalize the issue. Nobody tried to do anything to undermine the country. They did the best contract they did. They could.
There was another protection
that
you had. When the contractor got the contract, the contractor had to put up bonds in cash with banks.
Telling you what? Telling the people? Yeah.
If you don't perform on this contract, you can be rewarded by this cash coming back to you.
Speaker.
So he did that in the contract. That's the first thing that you must know. Is the UNC protected the public's interests by Rowley's confession. He was glad too bad to get the bonds and them converted into cash and make the arrangement that he did, so-called. But listen to him sometime afterwards, when OAS end up at an under arbitration decision, get back the blasted money that he say that they went and get. Listen.
I have been authorized by the cabinet to make the following statement.
Yeah.
It has become necessary, Madam Speaker, to put on the Parliament's record the facts with respect to the pertinent issues surrounding the contractual and other arrangements related to the extension of the Solomon-Hochai Highway to Point 14 by a Brazilian company called Contractual, OAS, commonly referred to as OAS. Madam Speaker, as I do this, I bring to the attention of this honorable House.
This is moral and ethical stand, the paragon of virtue. Watch him.
General public importance.
Yeah. He gone moral.
In regard to the preamble
that rapscallion.
Constitution,
yeah.
We dealt with OAS.
Constitution. Bringing constitution.
In late 2015 and into early 2016, basically stopped all works on the troubled highway project. At that time, Madam Speaker, abandoned workers were protesting daily. Subcontractors were claiming hundreds of millions of dollars being owed to them by an absent OAS. Equipment was being seized. Most of the expatriate OAS staff had left Trinidad and Tobago, and no progress was being made by OAS on the highway construction. It was also at that time, and in these circumstances, Madam Speaker, that the government had to intervene to pay desperate, disadvantaged, and abandoned workers. An amendment to the OAS contract that we discovered, an amendment that was secretly on Friday, September 4th, 2015.
Emphasize all the time.
Last working day before the September 7th, 2015 general election. 72 hours before the UNC was voted out of office.
Remember
the amendment,
emails
Speaker,
when you're talking so.
An alteration to the contract, amongst other things, removed a critical termination clause from the standard FIDIC Yellow Book contract, under which the project was being executed. This removal of clause 15(2)(e) is what has exposed the people of Trinidad and Tobago to a huge potential liability to OAS. What it effectively did, Madam Speaker, was effectively shift ownership and control of insurance bond money belonging to the government away from NICO and into the hands of the contractor.
I want you to observe, because what is to come next will enlighten and will lucidly indicate the level of what I consider to be excuse making for a single issue. And the single issue is, and he will not say it at all, whether or not they were paying the company or honoring the bills that the company would have issued done. Even if they were arguing that they didn't do all the work for the money they got already. But what the arbitration would have said is that even if that was so, they had enough money inside to cover what was outstanding in terms of completed work and still get something to continue the project. Rowley's focus and why on bankruptcy, because there is a clause in the arrangement, you will hear him emphasizing that if you are bankrupt, or even of course if you are in the circumstance where you have gone to court, not that you are bankrupt, but you have gone to court for bankruptcy protection, he is saying that the UNC should have told them that they're stopping the contract because them gone bankrupt, because the contract arrangement seems to be an ass. Rowley, you wasn't in this situation. If the government of the day was satisfied with the performance of OAS, 1 and 2, if they were satisfied, clearly they were, that the bankruptcy and legal imbroglio that they found themselves in back in Brazil, at their headquarters, where their headquarters is, had nothing to do with their performance here and the evaluation for what they're doing. And if the government was satisfied after the discussion, I'm sure that came up, and the integrity of Carson Charles, who was the CEO of NITCO at the time, a man with credentials of integrity way beyond Rowley and all of his ministers, and you bring him into this, being part of a government of A&R Robinson, the NAR, and I'm making a plug for him because nobody is doing it. He had a super responsibility with a super ministry, the Ministry of Works and all kinds of addendum, URP, etc., all of the malls and them that they constructed to try to give small man a economic foothold and ladder to climb. Carson Charles, was in charge of that NITCO at the time, and Rowley bring the man name into that. That is what he will do. He don't care. Look what he did to Roger. Look what he did to Jack Warner when both of them assisted him. You cross his path after and your dog's dead. It's only me. As yet, of course, he has not been able to find a way to, of course, muzzle and subdue. Now, it's only me. Everybody else, don't threaten him now that he has the office of Prime Minister. But before that, he was clutching hands and walking down to Shagaramas to give the poor people back their land and so on. Today, he's fatting on them, even though that is his constituency and his constituents. That is the evil you're dealing with. He's not just a narcissist. He's despicable, horrendous, rude, uncouth, and lewd. That's what he is. So, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised at all. But the thing about it is that by that time, there was a government in place and they took the decision. You're too damn fast. And what is fast to say they should have taken a loan too. And making an argument and of course putting that into his narrative and his specious and spurious and of course nonsensical and asinine and dotish argument and looking of course to talk about commission of inquiry. Well, go ahead. I'm sure that will end up like of course not only wasting our money and more evidence to show misbehavior in public office and blue lights and silver bracelets for your tail, you Rowley and the entire cabinet. Go ahead making decisions inimical to the interests of the public good and then telling us that you make it for the public good and using this spurious and nonsensical and non-existent argument so that you could look good, because you now have to face the situation where you and I, the electorate and the taxpayers now have to fork out nearly $1 billion to give back to OS, and you're dilly-dallying and you're trying of course to try to, as usual, obfuscate and to transfer blame. Not this time, Rowley. Let us get this clear that when you hear tomorrow the position of Sinanan and Rowley that the PNM was a paragon of virtue and that they had moral, I want you to know that that was preempted simply because Manning called at early elections 2 years before it was due. Understand that. And when you factor that in, you will see that no way they could have executed that project, even though, of course, they were dissatisfied with OS. But more importantly, because that came up too, more importantly, Rowley gave the impression that, listen, they love and care about the workers and the contractors, the subcontractors that were not paid. Knowing fully well that they were not paid because they did. He know that. So he don't mind paying them. And he has the audacity, the temerity, the gall, the effrontery, the boldfastness, the recklessness, the ruthlessness, the devilish disposition to say and to insult those and say that he care about them. That is why he paid them, because and that is why they get paid. He said that last week, you know. But those persons who sacrifice, probably they mortgage their homes and take from their families, from the education facilities company, and repair schools and so on. He closed down the company and don't want to pay them. But he loved, of course, those workers that he paid. Conveniently opportunistic and evil. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Lennox,
hey.
A pleasant good night to you at the airport.
Yes.
And especially according to Mark Babsy Fly. That is all he is. PNM Babsy Fly. Nothing more. Right. coming here tonight to call me a old goat, that's alright. That's okay.
Well done.
You will never wish it to be a old goat.
Take
because
it.
you will die at young one.
That's right. Take it. Take it and get up. Take it and get up. Yes.
Intelligent.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Let's love. You see that describe the people that Rowley speaking to?
Yes.
I wouldn't go so high, you know. I would go low and call them a bunch of crayfish. Chipperbrins is what they are. You all said that they cannot shrink with together to make a proper system. All they can do, but you know what? It's his low testosterone level causing them to be so on the tonight. I'd only leave it.
I hear you.
Because we know he better first they check. There's something wrong with it. Not for the way you're a rubbish. He gets it all like Rowley.
Yeah.
I know.
What's the fella?
Make up a story.
You're breaking up a little bit there.
Man of an active imagination.
Very.
He knows that when he lie like that, he have the copper face and affected on the sideline.
Yes.
Just I could. But he talking about what Jack Warner went and do. And you know, yes, what did he do to with Sanders? Did he on the golf course with Butch?
Yeah.
Slip on the tongue. On the golf course. Sanders.
Yeah. She knows that much is it.
All the deals that he went and gave Butch.
Yeah.
But it's the deals that the partnership with. Partnership.
You're breaking up, or you're breaking up.
When you see that, you see that.
Yes. I'm just telling you.
That takes so long to come on.
Yeah, all right. Go ahead.
What is really going on with the internet, right? But I was finished by saying,
yes,
right? He went. No man's land, this, that, no taxes for 25 years, all kind of things you promised, but you come in a line of, and as Rock said, Rowley accuses people of what he's doing. And it's good to that and get blessed, that he was one we could say something.
Yeah.
I swear that.
Yeah. Bottom line, fast with yourself. Damn fast. They were in government. They were in charge. They took the decision. Hold your tail. And the electorate, of course, will decide. But you didn't allow them to decide purely and with a level playing field. You looked to thief the elections. And thief the election again. And tried to thief another one, the THA. You blasted rapscallion. And then you come out and playing, of course, you are the elected. I am the Prime Minister. Always have to remind yourself about you being the Prime Minister. That's a man with an inferiority complex. An inferiority complex. That's how pugnacious this man is. Inferiority complex. And he wants to, of course, come in people's faces. I know that the audience merely tolerates him, and I know, of course, everybody turns off their television, like in my home, for example, because you're a blasted rapscallion and no good and a total opportunist that is of a criminal nature. But let's take this other call before we continue with Rowley's statements of falsehood and fake. Professor, good night. Welcome to the corridor. Professor, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night,
Good night.
Good night, everybody on the line.
Yes.
Good night, Lennox. Can you hear my voice?
Loud and clear. Lennox,
what's going on?
Yeah.
Cold pot. And going to macaroni and ham. Like macaroni fire and ham.
Yeah.
No, they want to raise electricity bill, so we have to light flambeau. But these nasty bitches on them. Why them going to buy some flambeau? and ride some bike. You get rid of the vehicle and ride some bike. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
And put flambo in the house too. Get rid of the AC, the second we have cut down and everything, whatever cut down and thing too. And in but this nasty, after say bitch life, no, what?
Whichever you choose. Whichever you choose.
Which one do you use?
Whichever you choose.
But that's nasty ass bitch.
Alright,
that's nasty ass bitch, Amber.
Alright,
You
okay.
want to raise gas, but if you have a gas station in Hoover, and you have a, so how you get money? And you want to raise gas, how you get money? Them all don't want to live. Somebody else don't want to live. Okay, long, still my time, sir.
Yes, indeed. You could be as angry as you can, but please, but don't use the obscenity that we know that is regular and common. Otherwise, you'll be contributing to the subterranean culture that, of course, we want to avoid. But of course, I allowed it simply because I want to let people know that you don't have to be or have a command of the English language. So. And once we can understand, that is what we want. So whether it's green verb, yellow verb, pink verb, it doesn't matter. Could even be stink verb and all, it doesn't matter. But please, not the raw obscenity that, of course, will offend, I'm sure, even myself. But of course, if you say damn, I have no difficulty with that. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night.
Good night, Mr. Lennox.
Good night to you.
I was going to when you live when you chat about the yeah, I was going to when you live when you chat about the regional internationally. So, Mr. Lennox, we see what this government doing, and more or less, I see that some people find the change in their mind because they realize the worst prime minister ever. They pay them now, but they know the worst prime minister ever as well. We and this government, these so-called ministers. But they still like the enemy, but they realize this man is no good for the country. Listen, this man saying they're gonna raise water, people not getting water, but you have to pay because if you don't pay, they're entitled to take your property. And raising electricity, the man say don't make, the next one says they don't raise macaroni pie. The next one says use school pot and ride bicycles. They're raising the insurance in the car. They're using gas price in the car. The next one say people too needy and they want so everything for free. That is the Kojo one.
Yeah, they're cocks. They're not cocks.
They're trying to see people who eat the macaroni pie, who have air condition, who cook chicken 3-4 times a day. That is luxury. You don't need that. Actually, the population now.
Yeah. And all their policies, all of their policies are so directed. Once it's for poor people, notice they go back to the original matchbox for housing, for example. That's the nature. Spend very little on them, but say is a big thing. And then, of course, take the land share for themselves and their so-called 1% these days.
Yeah, Mr. Nelson, you were saying it from 2 years ago, and I can always remember gentrification.
Yes.
And making the cost of living so high to be living in the town areas that people will have to leave and go to live more in the countryside. They're trying to make Port of Spain and the town areas, the high-costing areas of them only for a few, Mr. Lennox.
Yes.
Because they realize to themselves, Mr. Lennox. Yeah, they realize to themselves they cannot stop crying. They don't want to spend money to help the people, which is taxpayers' money. They're using taxpayers for their own benefit. Mr. Lennox, I have one solution to all these problems, and we'll get solved enough. When we get a majority in Parliament, we need to stop all these perks and tax exempt and these high salaries for all these public servants who in high office management. I ain't talking about the regular workers, I talk about management, I talk about politicians. Take away some of the perks and take away some of the money. And they don't work for an okay salary, but not a maximum salary. And you see how much of them really want to stay in politics, Mr. Rox. You have a momentum. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you have a point that the counter argument the government has always made, this PNM in particular over the years, is that the higher you pay them is more professional and more dedicated and more honest people that you will be able to attract. Well, it is clear that in practice that is not so. The more higher you go, is more greedy they get and more to abuse the people and line their own pockets, friends and family, nepotism, cronyism, and the devil take the high road as far as poor people are concerned. And while the poor and the unemployed are piling up, they then generate a narrative through the media to make it look as though that doesn't exist. And at the end of it all, as history would show, the country will be in a state of turmoil to the point where violence and upheaval of a physical nature will eventually end all of that. I suppose I may be quoting a chapter from or a concept of Karl Marx, where he talked about, of course, the proletariat versus, of course, the proletariat versus the egalitarian, not the egalitarian, talks about the proletariat versus another group, where, of course, clash will come, and then, of course, the proletariat will take over the ordinary people, and of course the society will balance out and so on. But that is all theory. The theory is that we have a group, a small group of individuals who have commandeered our resources, and of course our influence and are wielding influence across the multiple resources and assets of the country to their own benefits, and not equitably distributing it based, of course, on needs and, of course, abilities, and therefore we must get rid of them. They must be purged. They must be summarily, and we must be able to just the purge that is required to get rid of the Rowley administration. But let's get back, of course. I think we have spent enough of time on the video. Let's go back to Dr. Rowley and, of course, the question of OAS and examine some of it from time to time. If there is no need to, I will not, of course, pause.
That government took action to favor the contractor to the and Tobago. Now, the Speaker, it was on September 4th, 2015, the last working day before the general elections of September 7, 2015, the UNC government, having not used this opportunity to terminate the contract in a clean, cost-effective, and non-contentious manner, secretly entered into a written agreement with OAS called Contract Addendum Number 2, whereby the government of Trinidad and Tobago through NIDCO gave up its right and ability to terminate the contract on the grounds of OAS being under judicial reorganization, a move that only favored OAS. On September 4, 2015, the UNC government thus reaffirmed in writing their desire to keep a company that was under bankruptcy proceedings called judicial reorganization in Brazil.
And that is what anybody will be incensed about. How dare you, Rowley, usurp, superimpose, vicariously, even though it's post facto, after the fact. How dare you say what they should have done? Hold your tail. Hold your tail, Rowley. If they decide to do that, there's nothing you could do about it. Nothing. And all the grandstanding and grand charging and, of course, what's commission of inquiry and all that. Hogwash. Hold your tail. You are an ass. What are you telling me about? They should have. You find that they should not have amended as they saw fit. let the electorate determine that. And you didn't even do that. You went and talked to the EBC chairman to extend the elections by an hour. You didn't even do that. And whether or not you got the benefit that you wanted, the fact that you could do that demonstrates that you are an evil, wicked man and a fellow who is not prepared, of course, to engage in level playing field encounter in order, of course, to contest an election. You want an unfair advantage, as we saw with the Tobago scenario we're telling you about, and we know you very well now. Hold your tail. That is the prerogative of the government of the day. There's nothing you could do. What you want to say that you alone must do it, and that others mustn't do it because you suddenly get some kind of moral conscience. Hold your tail. Hold your tail, boy.
As their preferred contractor.
And incidentally, of course, just before we continue, of course, is the bourgeoisie, you know, the Karl Marx bourgeoisie and the proletariat, well, of the big shots and so on, and that conflict will, of course, generate an explosion that is supposed to neutralize the things. That was the term that eluded me temporarily, but of course I got it whilst Rowley was talking, because I see him as a artificial bourgeoisie, creating, of course, this 1%, in other words. That is our bourgeoisie in Trinidad.
For the Point 14 highway. Madam Speaker, despite the recent assertion of Dr. Carson Charles, the then CEO of NIDCO, that the removal of clause 15.2e was done on the advice of NIDCO's engineer, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, no document has been found anywhere in NIDCO to support such a belated contention.
Don't be surprised if them hide it, but I want you to go back. When Malcolm Jones' matter was in the court, put there by the UNC to salvage or to get some of the monies that he injudiciously spent and recklessly spent to cost us billions of dollars in that gas to liquid. The Privy Council said that less than a paragraph was an opinion given by the disgraced Vincent Nelson, the same man who, of course, they set up to convict as a false witness. And I could say so now because it is no longer sub judice. The DPP has withdrawn the matter, so I could talk so. To set up Anal Ramlogan and Ramdeen to be a false witness of kickback, etc., and misbehavior in public office. Well, it's the same man that gave him less than a paragraph according to the Privy Council. And the Privy Council was shocked that such a recommendation, such an opinion will only have a paragraph, and that the government took that and say that they should take away or take out the matter that they have against Malcolm Jones from the court. That rapscallion, he had no moral authority to talk about what another government did when he is the quintessential and the exemplary exhibition of blatant abuse and disrespect for the public's good and the public's right and the public's interest. Billions of dollars, according to the Privy Council. The Privy Council was amazed. Billions of dollars. And one of the judges said, listen, the money that they're talking about is big money for Trinidad and Tobago. And they also observed that before the election, Al-Rawi, the then Attorney General, subsequently was talking about withdrawing the matter from the court. And Rowley himself said that Malcolm Jones is a friend and he has done yeoman service to the country with respect to The history doesn't show that. But he said pointlisas, and so that is a man is untouchable, and he could spend over $25 billion of our money and get away scotch-free. That is what this wicked man, and now he is concerned. He is concerned and looking for some kind of advice that Castle Charles got. Hold your tail. You're an ass and disrespectful and hypocritical. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night.
Yes, good night to you. Yes.
Good night.
Good night to you.
Before the local general election, the EBC was doing an exercise of verification of the voters list. Now, I think this has to do with the Constitution. Every between 2 and 5 years, they must do an exercise with respect to
verification,
whether they will make boundary changes or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know places like in the hotspots like St. Barb's, Caledonia, if these people were invaded to do any verification exercise. I want the opposition to ask that question if it comes to the budget that they are having. Because of this kind of exercises, there were several people from the list were deleted. For example, in the time of when Mr. Pandey was in power, I think it was in 2000, about 8,000 people. The CNN make a big thing about that, and they see the commission and also quite in the PC.
Yeah.
And I think they put back those people because apparently when the EBC checked, they couldn't find those people. But when Marlin got back in power, it was delayed. So what you find is it affects the average. And if the average, right, because the boundaries are placed, distributed according to the average, you have within 10% out, above, so you have 9%. Looking at it, and also in 72 or 73, when Eric Williams was in power, they put 270 something people on the list compared to the that would have been in the after the 66 election. Right? So I think that one was the outsiders would get cast a vote, which was one of the considerations Eric Williams used to bring back the ballot box. But as somebody who lives at state, when you look at say Porter State South, so you have Porter State South, you have the 211 seat, and then you have Saddam Hussein seat, Budgetoray seat. Where really is Porter State South? I feel they're counting all the pieces of clothes in the clothes stores and all the bottles in Anna's restaurant for them. I cannot see if you have a 11 east, a 11 west, you have Saddam Hussein keep coming in. Where you're getting 20 something thousand people. You don't have that. So I think the UNC needs to look at this. They have
I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. In other words,
these are the things they really have to look. They really have to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. In other words,
so
in other words, are you saying that there ought to be one constituency less because it really will not be able to meet the numerical standard, and therefore there should have been one? In other words, Portsmouth South, for example, should not be? Right. I gather it. I gather what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Where that is.
Yeah. I take your point.
And then with us, then you come in right after the Porter Street North Sea, you have the sentence.
Yeah.
And the sentence going all Santa Cruz.
Yeah. And
right?
and geographically, that's small spaces.
If you look at the Degomatic, 3 Degomatic seats, right? The Degomatic northeast is all boss here, going all by the Circular Mall in Century. D-Day, right? D-Day in that area, and then all by the Machuba crossing in Degomatic there. That is Degomatic East.
Mm-hmm.
So where is Central and West? If you have Porter Springs South, probably we take all of probably around just before Kokori. Right? Where are those two Degomatic seats? So while the opposition is looking at marginal seats to come, I see there are a lot of voters of names on lists which are non-existent. So you have so like if I have 19,000 or 20,000, 19,000 PNM supporters in a seat, right? And at election time, 17,000 come out and vote. So you will say, people will say, well, there's a PNM stronghold. There are plenty PNM people there. But you have 17,000 real people, and you have about 6,000 people who are non-existent.
Yeah.
Right?
And
this crime, this crime is connected with the voters list, because the EBC people cannot go in these areas. For example, I call in from Marvel, and I have seen these people up here, and this is why living is not really a crime spot. I didn't see anybody coming. The only place I saw them is by the local government. The local government ministry, by Royal Bank there. They are wanted by doubles there, and I see them before the date of local election was called. So I think the UNC has to find out, put this question to them at the budget committee meeting.
I'm going to take note. In fact, I'm going to mention it tomorrow on the ground report. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
So this is every 2 to 5 years. That is in the Constitution. They must have this review of the boundary, right? If there are any changes to make every 2 to 5 years. So I think the election, right? People call it for observers, but when you have this kind of fraud with respect to boundary, it's a waste of time with international people, because that is where you're supposed to be doing the checking.
I hear you.
So,
I hear you.
I feel the crime thing, the PNM have no problem with the crime, because you cannot conduct a proper assessment of the number of people in the country, in a constituency, especially the crime spots. So the crime might decrease because the EBC probably finished that exercise. So we may have a decrease in crime. So good night, Lennox. That is my contribution.
Thanks very much.
I hope you highlight this thing about this boundary exercise.
Yes.
Find out.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think very, very sagacious, very, very interesting as well, and very pertinent, because if that has been is contributing to the dominance of the PNM along the East-West corridor in particular, it's worth investigating, because he raised a very interesting point. Whether or not constituencies, and he mentioned at least 2, so it could be more, but let's say in Central and Port-au-Prince South, he is saying that they are not really constituencies as qualified, having 20,000 voters or less, because the arrangement is legally that EBC is supposed to review the constituencies, and of course if constituencies grow to the point where, let's say, they have 30, 40,000 persons in that particular constituency, then it is entitled to split it in two, because a constituency mustn't have too far above 20,000 inside of these constituencies. What he's saying is the reverse. There may be constituencies that have so little that could be distributed in the adjacent constituencies and do away with, let's say, Port of Spain South and of course Diego Martin Central. In that way, you have two constituencies less, and therefore the argument that historically the manipulation of EBC under conspirators relationship with incumbent and non-incumbent, but because the PNM has been there for so long, and their operatives indeed find themselves in these institutions strategically solely to promote the PNM and give them an unfair advantage, and the possibility exists that there may be constituencies that does not qualify as a constituency but exist on the books and ratified by EBC in this and unholy way to undermine our democratic and the electoral process. I think is something worthy of consideration. I've never looked at it in that context. The presence of a constituency that may not be qualified to be a constituency in that cluster, that small geographic space. I mean, we can count it: Diego Martin West, Diego Martin East, Diego Martin Central, Port of Spain South, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, Laventille East, Laventille West, St. Anne's East. Those are the areas there. Of course, we go up to, of course, Sawa, Barataria, then we go, of course, to St. Joseph, and then to the Puna, Arima, and then, of course, the others, so on, and we go up the road into, of course, Sangre Grande. Yeah, so I take your point. That cluster of constituencies that are considered to be PNM dominated and safe seats for the PNM, because over the years, and there's a historical element that he mentioned, Eric Williams and the 1966 elections when they used the voting machine, and in that particular election, Robinson got votes that were more than were in the constituency, and that got him vexed. And before, or as a prelude to the 1971 elections, he was part and parcel and initiated, of course, a no vote campaign for the reinstatement of the ballot box as opposed to the voting machine. So I want to, of course, take you that there could be some historical, what I consider lingering, and that there may be one or two constituencies that may not qualify to be a constituency in the legalistic sense under, of course, the Representation of the People's Act and other supportive pieces of legislation, such as, of course, the Constitution. So we have to look at that. Thank you very much for that contribution. I thought I should pause because I think that is crucial, because it determines who must rule this country, and we do not want ever again a despicable crop of individuals who are prepared because maybe of that advantage that they would have had, so that they could conduct themselves as total rapscallions and obnoxious beasts in human form, such as Hines would talk to people as he wants, as Rowley would, and of course members of this cabinet, because they believe that somehow, because of that undermining of the system and manipulation thereof, and the insertion of elements that are sympathetic to them. They believe that they could rule Trinidad and Tobago forever, and that is why probably they are saying that Trinidad and Tobago belongs to the PNM. And I say no, this is a democracy, and that kind of conduct cannot be countenanced. If they knew they had to work hard for serving the people, they would serve the people better. But if they know they have a built-in advantage over the rest in the electoral process, one could understand why they would conduct themselves in such obnoxious, evil, and disrespectful manner. So I take your point, caller, very, very, very well done. I'll take it up as well on the of course, ground report. And let's continue, of course, with Rowley. Nonsensical, irrelevant, and osseous argument that ought to be very simple. You breached the blasted contract because you didn't pay the people, and the people, of course, took action, and they won in arbitration. Full stop. And we, the people, must now pay $1 billion. And he's so obnoxious, he Rowley, and so self-serving that he even mentioned that the UNC was in glee when of course the arbitrator said that OS has to be paid. Not that they have been vindicated, but they're glad. So he want them to be vexed. He want them to be vexed because he says so. That ass called a prime minister. He want them to be vexed. But when AV drilling got to the nod of the arbitrator under questionable circumstance, because the lawyer for Petrotrin said appeal the matter, they never appealed it. But it was Stuart Young in the parliament who went there and was in glee as if it was a vindication that AV drilling got not only the contract back, but also monies coming out of that arrangement. But it's good for he. It's all right for him. But when another person does it, he Rowley has some kind of despicable disapprobation. And all of us, he believes on his own, of course, must share in his distress. Well, I say to you, Rowley, I say to you, distressful people like company. People in their agony and pain like company. Yeah, there are people like that. You are one of those. And the population will distance themselves from you. You blasted son of a gun. Let's continue.
To date, Madam Speaker, no document has been found providing any advice that clause 15(2)(e) should have been removed.
Yeah, so he wants an investigation.
I have raised this question for 7 years. The drawing down of the advance payment and performance securities was met with resistance by some of the institutions that had issued them and by OAS. NIDCO pursued these matters in courts in various jurisdictions, including England, and was successful by orders of the court, including the Supreme Court of England and Wales.
Yes,
the recovery of these securities by NIDCO was permitted, and in some cases was the result of court orders.
Inflate your ego.
Even directed
feeling good.
The money recovered in the interim must only be used to carry on the project. To suggest that it was an imprudent course to draw down on these securities is self-serving, grasping at straws, and running errands for the contractor.
Now just imagine that. They tell you in escrow or something so. He's saying that is a bad advice and is running error for them. And the arbitration now say you have to give them it back. No, you have to give them it back. You're making all kinds of frivolous, nebulous, dotish, and of course, recalcitrant as he was in not taking the advice, having been given good advice. It's like the fellow who, of course, taking a chance. He has some money saved. But he tell himself he could buy a car because it happened to me. He could buy a car and pull bull, and when it is sufficiently worn, sell it so that he could get back the money and put it back in the bank. But it so happened that the car crashed, and the entire, very optimistic, well, that is what happened to Rowley. He car crash, haven't taken the chance and spent the people money, because if it was the government money, if it was our money, the arbitration is mad to say give them it back. Their money that you went and get because they put up as a bond, and you claim that they leave the work, they abandon the work. The arbitration say no, you lie. The people put up the case that you didn't pay them, and you indicate you didn't pay. And I'm sure that part of the argument is what they were saying before. Sure. And playing Bajan and madman stupid. Powerful stupid and take basket. He own basket. He tell himself that he could do that and get away. He own basket. And now that $1 billion is to be paid, and you know that the population will be up in arms against you, and that you don't stand a ghost of a chance in any election again in Trinidad because you crashed the blasted country, you're looking, of course, to salvage. Hold your tail, get the hell out. Where you going kind of for? Call election now. Call election.
Madam Speaker, the government always warned publicly on many occasions,
shifting the narrative,
whilst it recovered these securities and was using the money to continue the construction of the highway, there was the possibility that if OAS was successful in the arbitration, the sums gifted to them by the UNC may have to be repaid to OAS, and the full extent of the curious action of amending the contract will come home to the people of Trinidad.
Nothing you say makes sense, Rowley. The chance you take crash, and now you're looking to save face. There is no grace. There is no face to save. You are faceless. Injury once again to the people, and you should get the hell out. You took the risk and you failed once again.
Tobago. Sadly, Madam Speaker, this has now come to pass, and the people of this country
come to pass. Sad for who? Sad for you.
Court approved $18.
Prime Minister in this country.
Wasn't it built in?
Let me hear what you had to say there. That last piece is very important that you get it. I don't want to talk over it so that you wouldn't get an appreciation. A pleasant good night. Welcome. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Lennox.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night to you.
To me that it seems to me that like the country needs not involvement when he was in power. That's all?
Yes. Hello?
And paying when he's in this country.
Yes. Yeah. According to Rowley. According to Rowley.
Yeah, but all the corruption that they do at Tesoro and Racing Complex and all kind of...
You know that never happened. Never happened. Yeah. That never happened. That never happened.
It's a smoke screen government.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Smoke screen government. Look at the Donald Cook.
Manning the pressure.
And talking about.
Yeah.
Donald Cook coming down last week and talking about $1 million $10 a day in the food card business. Look what mad boss and my country. She quiet, she can't say nothing. She go down and cash and check out and inside the ministry and she can't get nobody.
Yes.
All the Cox and Catherine Dory and them good to do is wear wigs. It's famous for that. There is wig specialists and eyelash specialists. Like all them know about. They can't go no country, you know.
That's right.
And what
Total.
they gave before Christmas, Lennox?
They what?
Or after?
What was that?
I want to know the going home. I want to know the Wasa workers going home. I want to know the Wasa workers going home before or after Christmas.
What I know for sure is that they're going home. But you mean if they get the political opportunity, because if election is in the air, they ain't going home. They ain't going home. If election is in the air, they will tell them they're not going home. But as soon as it's finished and the devil intervene somehow, and by some miraculous nonsensicality, them come back in office, they bust the truth. So they should thank they should thank themselves for resisting and waiting until Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the UNC comes in. Otherwise, if it's before they're gone.
I feel as well going on before Christmas. That's 2 months ago again. Well,
it depends on yeah, but it depends on how exhaustive the treasury is, the coffers, because that's what they will do it for. They will just cut because they want, of course, and they will implement the property tax, of course, and so on and so forth, and then try to give us some kind of hogwash in the final year if they don't do it before the end of this year, or indeed, of course, next year. So we'll see. But don't put it beyond them. They are that evil.
And they take a cocaine move after and people get like
but I'm sure that's why they're so desperate. They're so desperate to cut.
The government had maxed out everything and they were like fuel.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Everywhere.
We live in fuel minus.
Yes, indeed.
Minus fuel we live in.
I hear you.
Go inside there and do a proper audit of what the government do.
Yes, camouflage right through only old talk and hogwash and all kinds of illusion and delusion and circumlocutions and all of that. But at the end of the day, we can't eat employers and all of the other disaster that is taking place around us. But with the fullness of time, all right? Okay.
A little short man who is recorded in October like a Halloween for the budget. That is the only claim to fame. Talking about nonsense and rubbish.
I'm telling you what it is.
You can't books at all.
Yeah, but I want to. Yes. I want to go until at least 1:30. So let me see if I can finish that. Quite a long way to go still with respect to that because there's a lot of history behind that. 10 years. But of course, the caller is correct. Sarcasm will get him everywhere because of course Rowley and they will of course self cleanse, engage in some kind of catharsis, purging themselves, whilst of course looking at others and saying that they are this and that, and addendum to that kind of nonsense that they are engaged with, as if people are stupid. They can't even convince themselves that they are serious about what they are doing. There's a manic depressive psychosis collectively that they are engaging.
But these securities and was using the money to continue the construction of the highway, there was the possibility that if OAS was successful in the arbitration, the sums gifted to them by the UNC may have to be repaid to OAS, and the full extent of the curious action of amending the contract will come home to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, Jerry Joseph. Larry Joseph.
This has now come to pass.
Larry Joseph.
And the people of this country
Tommy Joseph
need to give back the court-approved $852 million.
Got to give it back.
Built into the system that had been negotiated, that you would get those 6. Would you have been able to call on the banks? Would Citibank have given? Would the other banks, although they tested it in court, would you have had the means to go to court and win the money had not these things been built into the arrangements that had been done under NITCO at the time?
And under the UNC.
Let us not sensationalize the issue. Nobody tried to do anything to undermine the country. They did the best contract they could.
There was another protection that you had. When the contractor got the contract, the contractor had to put up bonds.
Insisted by the UNC. Insist.
With banks, saying to you, the people, if we don't perform on this contract, you can be rewarded by this cash coming back to you. Minister Stuart Young, he went to the banks and he went to London and returned to Brazil, and today we have recovered $1,000 million from that contract.
The PLM subscribed to, aspires to, and holds fast to the principle of morality in public affairs.
Larry Joseph!
So we want to get into this OAS arbitration issue, and it is my respectful view that the government
and a lawyer.
The head of the government, the Prime Minister, is not being transparent and forthright with the population on this issue. The first issue I have is the way in which the Prime Minister and the government decided to bring this matter to the attention of Parliament. They chose to do so via what we call statements to the Parliament, or ministerial statements to the Parliament. That has to be wrong. What that is essentially the Prime Minister going and speaking at the Parliament. Not subject to debate, not subject to scrutiny. No one in the opposition could question what the Prime Minister says or engage him in a debate. So essentially we just have to take the Prime Minister's word as to what are the facts of the matter. That can't be correct process, and that cannot be proper parliamentary scrutiny, and it defeats the constitutional purpose of Parliament. The second issue with that is that the Prime Minister went to the Parliament, spoke about the arbitration process, spoke about the arbitration award and decision, yet did not lay the entire decision before the Parliament. He could have done so. Now you might want to say, as NIDCO has said, that the arbitration is confidential and we ought not to speak about it because of confidentiality provisions. Well, if that's the case, then quite frankly, the Prime Minister ought not to have said anything on the issue.
That's right.
But what you cannot do, and what seems to be very dangerous, especially to a democratic society, is to come and give half of the picture and half of the judgment and ruling, not even half, an excerpt or two which was selected by you, probably to suit your own narrative, to the Parliament, and then try to spin or make your own pronouncements on what took place. That cannot be right. If you're going to speak on a topic, lay the entire procedure before Parliament, lay the entire arbitration award or judgment before Parliament, like who's correct and who's wrong, so that the entire procedure was bad. But let's get into the OAS issue.
I want to say to my lawyer friend that is expected of a con man. It's a con job. He wants to have dominance and want the entire narrative, and all over the place now, trying to convince himself now, because no one is convinced of the nonsense that he speaks and the con job that they know his intention is. So your assessment, my friend, is on par and of course consistent with my own assessment.
Let's get into the arbitration. What seems to have happened, and from my view of what the Prime Minister said in Parliament yesterday, is that the government is conflating or mixing up issues. There are two issues which arise from this. One is that OAS became bankrupt and that the contract was amended under the People's Partnership Government. And the second issue is that the contract was terminated, which took place in 2016 Administration. The arbitration award and the huge award made against the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that taxpayers have to now fork out over $100 million to pay to OAS, is as a result of the decision by the PNM government in 2016 to terminate the contract. It has nothing to do with the amendment of the contract which took place in 2015. And therefore, all of this talk and narrative that the Prime Minister is now talking about liquidation and the amending of the contract has absolutely nothing, in my respectful view, to do with this award by OAS, this award in favor of OAS by the arbitrators, which has now caused the taxpayers to find $100 million, which we probably don't have. That is simply bad management and bad decision making by the current administration, in my respectful view. And The problem, of course, is, as I've said, we don't have the judgment in hand. But what we do have is an express report where the authors say that they have had sight of it. And what the express report says, and I invite everybody to look at it, it's clear. Firstly, OAS and NITCO got into a conflict. NITCO decided, under the PNM administration's guidance, to terminate the contract because NITCO was bankrupt, but because they were alleging that OAS had abandoned the contract. What does abandon mean?
When he said NITCO, it obviously is a slip of the tongue. He was referring, of course, to OS was bankrupt. It's not that they were bankrupt. Just to make a correction there.
NITCO was alleging that OAS didn't want to do the work anymore. OAS countered that allegation in the arbitration by saying, we want to do the work, it's just that you are not paying us the money to continue to do the work. That is the issue that went before the arbitrators and decided essentially that NITCO was wrong and they terminated the contract improperly. The arbitrators decided that NITCO had no grounds to terminate the contract for abandonment, and that has to be wrong. And essentially, that is the issue. And in my view, what is happening here is that the government and the Prime Minister seems to be spinning a narrative or saying something that is not what happened. The only time we will know this is when the actual full judgment of the arbitrator reaches to the public domain.
Oh, what a tangle web we weave when we first set out to deceive Rowley. Rowley, a blasted deceiver. You is the cause of that, and no one else. You could bring how much, and you are going to pay for that. When only out of office, the abuse of public funds, rather than putting it to textbooks or buying laptops for them, you prefer, of course, to pay a lawyer, because you plain lawyer, and you want, of course, to dispossess the country and to make the country believe that somehow you are not at fault for your incompetence and your consistent and persistent failures across the various spectrum of life and government and governance in this country. You are going to pay, you and your bunch of opportunistic political criminal mafia under an enterprise, a criminal enterprise called the PNM.
After they awarded the contract to Point 40 and gave all of it to one contractor from Brazil, the contractor...
Let's pause there. Give all to one contractor. Oh gosh, Rowley. Tomorrow you will see where Sininan said, Rowley said, that OAS was a company associated with the PNM because they were giving out that contract, and they wanted it to come in to just about $3 billion, but everybody has bidded above $3 billion. Yes, was considered, but when they realized that OS couldn't do it for less than the $5 billion, they said, well, they will go back out to tender. As I said earlier, by that time, Manning had decided to call elections. That was 3 years into the PNM's administration. So no way anything else could have been done. But the fact is that OAS was already in the precincts or in the domain or in the consciousness or in the for the contract. OAS. I'm saying so for one reason. Listen, Rowley, give it to one contractor because he is boasting that he gave the current situation, the current contracts to a plethora of local contractors. Incidentally, local contractors that he and of course Stuart Young said were part of a cartel under the UNC and took them to court. The same people he now have to call on. As we said, there could never be any cartel, as of course a senior counsel, Ramesh Lawrence Moran, said. How the hell you come up with cartel? You're a nincompoop or something? You're a legal charlatan or something? How could you come up with that When it's about five, if you're in the United States and you have hundreds and thousands of contractors with same equipment and ability and so on, then you could talk that. You know, they're gone back and use the same fellas, including Calco. Calco get the $400 million to construct the highway to Manzanilla, and it turned out to be a highway to nowhere. Now Malco get contract. Junior Sammy get contract, even though Junior Sammy was not a part of the five. But almost all of them got contracts. And as I was saying earlier, that of course Jusamco, which is a subsidiary of Junior Sammy, was pouring concrete at Balize House for the foundation with a concrete pouring truck. Yet still, Rowley tells us in the local government election at the last rally at, of course, Constantine Park, that listen, not a contractor deployed by the government in the highway arrangement did any work on Balize House. I mean, how more criminalistic can one be, and how more exposed? The evidence is so damn pellucid that a rookie investigator could lose Rowley in jail and the entire cabinet for that kind of criminal behavior in public office and abuse of public office, and totally not only disrespecting, not only of course depriving the public and citizens and taxpayers, but you come with these unvarnished lies and convincing yourself, nobody else, that you are fooling somebody, and you're coming out brave and bold. You're spitting the sky and it fall in your face. That's what happened there. So, question: if you now saying and boasting that the UNC did not consider local contractors, because you're bringing, of course, the consultative, the contractors consultative organization, and say that they gave UNC the recommendation that they should use local. Well, let me ask you something, Rowley. When you and Manning was considering, of course, OAS, if they had come up with the 3 million threshold that all was looking to pay, who would have gotten the contract? Who would have gotten the contract, Rowley? It would have been OS alone, yeah? Yeah, right. You damn false, fake pretender. You hear now? He talking bankrupt now. Today he talking something different. Judicial.
And others who were owed money by the contractor who had stopped the job as a result of the bankruptcy in Brazil and what was going on. I told you then that when they awarded the contract documents had clauses in it that protected against that kind of eventuality. There was one clause, was clause 15(2)(e), which said that if the contractor is insolvent or goes bankrupt, the bonds that the contractor put up fall by the state. In other words, the state can protect itself and recover the money because the contractor has gone bankrupt and it's on the state. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you, they did something which allowed the contractor to go away the bonds. And we came into government and met that. Hot and warm.
Yeah, the usual shenanigans and, of course, histrionics.
That this behavior of our government was a reasonable action, and what we are dealing with here is an attempt to defraud the state of a substantial amount of money. The court agreed, and agreed in our favor that we should get the bonds and cash them and use the money on the project. That is how the .14 highway is being built going on there.
Remember, of course, that was before the conclusion or while the arbitration was going on. They make that case and they get the money, claiming that is fraud. How is fraud? It's the people money. And it turned out that it's you who stopped them because you stopped paying them and you frustrated the contract and they left. And of course the arbitration say, give them back the blasted money. But I thought I should bring that up and play that so you will understand the level of lies and how and the distance Rowley will go to try, of course, to justify the unjustifiable and, of course, cover up their incompetence, impotence, and malicious conduct only to be in office and where he is. That man say, that is a man who say that he didn't want the work, you know. Boy, I could well imagine if he really wanted the work, what would be happening with Trinidad and Tobago today, because he's getting on as a man who not only wanted the work, but desperate not to leave it, even though he can't do it. And you have, of course, those patronizing him.
The contractor is not lying over and play dead. The contractor is going to go to arbitration. And we will only know our fate when the arbitration is
talking our fate now, eh?
Ladies and gentlemen, the chickens have to go to roost.
Yes, indeed, yes. Tell them, confess.
On the 31st of March, and I want you to pay attention to this. Confirmed by the arbitrator in the arbitration, on the 31st of March 2015, OS was insolvent under the laws of Trinidad and Tobago and Brazil.
Now, what the hell the laws of Trinidad and Tobago had to do with with a Brazilian firm? What the hell? Rowley gone mad. And then the laws of Trinidad and Tobago and Brazil. He invented that, you know. He inserted that, you know. Understand the man. I mean, you had to just remember what he said in Parliament under the honorableness and the sincerity and the dignity of Parliament. The man went and lie about a prime minister and say that she conspired to kill a journalist, you know. Understand that? How do you mean under the laws of Trinidad and Tobago? They didn't show that, even if they said OS Trinidad and Tobago. They have a big contract with the government. They could never be insolvent in Trinidad. In Brazil, their headquarters. But the government of the day said that it is not sufficient for them to terminate the contract, and that is the call of the government of the day. You're too damn fast and out of place. You're fast and out of place, Rowley. Only making excuses for your incompetence and your vindictive conduct and trying to manifest something that doesn't exist. And now that you get yourself having to be responsible for $1 billion, the people who you victimize, you're now looking to spread the opportunity. I could well imagine the kind of pain and ache and, of course, situation that members of your cabinet facing. I'm sure you tell them, if you only leave, if you only spill the beans, I will cut you down. I'm sure you're doing that. They're under duress, people. The entire cabinet, but it's them put themselves in that. All of them must now be called upon by the criminal justice system to account for their respective role in this travesty that is the PNM and the decadence and the shambolic nature that Trinidad and Tobago is now in, cause and of course exercised by this fella leading a bunch of opportunistic political parasites. That is what is happening. That is what has happened. Oh, what a tangle web we weave when we first... Let me repeat that. Oh, what a tangle web we weave when we first set out to the sea. People, it's already 10:45, but are going until this finish.
Who was in government in this country on the 21st of March 2015? And the election was in September 2015.
Trying to make excuses.
The contractor, by public information, because all of us knew OS went bankrupt for corruption in Brazil.
Yeah.
March, the contractor goes bankrupt. March, April, May, June, July, August. The UNC under Commerce.
And he could detail lies. Notice how we detail in those emails. Details even projected, and he even act vicariously. At this time, somebody was getting anxious, and Mr. Speaker, the owner or the writer or the author of this email, and he gave, of course, some bogus email address, is now saying that, listen, we need to put this to rest. We need, of course, to curb and to think, because the lady is getting anxious, and so on and so forth. That is the kind of evil that we have as Prime Minister. Shenanigans worse than these comedians that we have, whether it's Larry Joseph, Tommy Joseph, and at the same time, a total and absolute combo politically, of course.
Did absolutely nothing
Look,
to protect the public money.
Just so he was going on in the parliament.
If the contractor is bankrupt, that money belongs to the people of Trinidad.
What the Express report says, and I invite everybody to look at it, it's clear. Firstly, OAS and NIDCO got into a conflict. NIDCO decided, under the PNM administration's guidance, to terminate the contract, not because NIDCO was bankrupt, but because they were alleging that OAS had abandoned the contract. What does abandon mean? NIDCO was alleging that OAS didn't want to do the work anymore. OAS countered that allegation in the arbitration by saying, we want to do the work, it's just that you are not paying us the money to continue to do the work. That is the issue that went before the arbitrators, and the arbitrators decided essentially that NIDCO was wrong. The
government was wrong.
Improperly. The arbitrators decided that NIDCO had no grounds to terminate the contract for abandonment, and that has to be wrong, and essentially that is the issue. NIDCO decided, under the PNM administration's guidance, contract, not because NIDCO was bankrupt, but because they were alleging that OAS had abandoned the contract. What does abandon mean? NIDCO was alleging that OAS didn't want to do the work anymore. OAS countered that allegation in the arbitration by saying, we want to do the work, it's just that you are not paying us the money to continue to do the work. That is the issue that went before the arbitrators, and the arbitrators decided essentially that NIDCO was wrong, and they terminated the contract improperly. The arbitrators decided that NIDCO had no grounds to terminate the contract for abandonment, and that has to be. We want to do the work, it's just that you are not paying us the money to continue to do the work.
That's right.
That is the issue that went before the arbitrators, and the arbitrators decided essentially that NIDCO was wrong, and it's just that you are not paying us the money to continue to do the work. That is the issue that went before the arbitrators, and the arbitrators decided essentially that NIDCO was wrong, NIDCO was wrong, NIDCO was wrong, NIDCO was wrong, NIDCO was wrong.
As I speak to you now, when we came into government, we met the highway to Point 14 stopped. Because the highway to Point 14 somehow ended up down as a highway to DB, an offshoot, right? The intention was to build a highway past the creek, down through the main road, down through Uslak, into Point 14, and off that highway, you could build spurs into the other areas.
Again, Rowley, you're damn fast and out of place. The government of the day decide that the route of the highway must pass somewhere else to include certain other parts that would have been otherwise left out from a PNM organized, or should I say designed highway. It's very simple. It's just as when they design the Kurup interchange in a particular way and only redesign it. It was to cause 8 800 million, end up getting it for 200 and claiming that is the same intersection. No. And why you do that? Why did you take and follow what the UNC, what you met when the UNC demitted office? No, because you are the government of the day and you have a right to act differently. So that's what you did. The UNC finished several and incompleted several schools, 107, and take up, of course, 4 or 5 or 6 of them and complete them. It was the UNC decided to build a aquatic center and, of course, a velodrome. No corruption you could have found. And a hospital, the Cuba Hospital. That is their decision. You're damn fast to want, of course, you can't manage your own thing in the PNM. You want, of course, post facto, after the fact, manage that of the UNC. Hold your tail. With your ugly bald-headed self. One clout. Gone from here, you're gone mad. How you mean? They decide to cry down the bay and you vex? What you vex about? They would have to find the money. They will have made the decision. The decision is theirs. They are in government, and you're damn out of place to of course, say that it ought to be what the PNM said. Hold your tail. Trying to gain cheap politics. Because all day you have tremendous agricultural holdings that would have benefited from that, so they have a right to put it there too, so that they can have access and of course develop as everybody else would be along that piece of road for advancement for the deep south of the country. Hold your tail. And that was a better arrangement than just from Point Fortin to San Fernando, what you just opened.
They took the main project into their constituency.
The UNC was building the San Fernando to Penal Highway, you know.
Yeah.
It started.
Parroting what Rowley say. That is what they do. Propaganda. It was a highway to Point Fortin, and it would have ended up in Point Fortin anyway. But just that they did not go the route that Rowley and the PNM take. That is not the only route. They were in government and they decided that they are going to change and add something and etc. And you're damn fast. And if they want to make amendment to the contract, they make amendment. What, of course, it is suitable to them. The only people to account to is the electorate, and in other words, the people. But of course, because of your deceptive and deceitful and of course pernicious intervention, the people, of course, were led astray, and now they are paying the price, the ultimate price of a devil in human form that is in government today, called Rowley, Lucifer, manifestation or manifest. They tell me about. Hold your tail. That is their prerogative. They made the decision, and it's only the electorate they must account to, not you. And you now say they should have. Hold your tail. They took it down there, and is that.
At the Point Fortin Highway. But look at that, the first leg of the highway was Golconda to Davie.
Political.
And then it continued to Penal. It was almost finished to Penal, you know. After that, they would have stopped, they would have forget you.
Which is really an issue involving a massive
political consideration. That is the level of kobo that you have, plural here, in the government of today. Look into it reminds me of when the UNC had told the people of East Port of Spain, listen, only take them apartments, all you owning, all day for generations upon generations, for $100. Eulalie James, the parliamentary representative for Port of Spain, for Lavantil West at the time, tell them, no, that is a trick. And you're so stupid today, Rowley would have catch his tail to get all out, because all would have had all the deed or whatever legal instrument, you would have been able, of course, to will it to your children or who you prefer, as well as you could use it for collateral to set up a business, or indeed, all now they couldn't tell you, well, listen, you can't bring extra people inside here, you can't bring an animal, as the case may be, because all it would have been controlling your own thing, and then therefore around carnival time you empty a room and you get, of course, tourists who want to, of course, stay right in town. You're right in town already, and then you get a little change, US probably, dollars preferably, during carnival time and so on. That is the kind of vision that the UNC had for, of course, that area. And you go and talk to these, what I consider to be myopic, miscreant, and of course recalcitrant and totally intellectually depraved and cognitively outmoded, cognitively outmoded individuals. And today East Port of Spain is now reeling from what? From the vicious attack of the PNM, and Rowley wanted to bulldoze that whole place and gentrify it, put the originals out and put their 1% gated community status. That is what is happening, because we fail to recognize that the PNM is toxic, evil, and is the bane of the country, and is the existential, as well as it was in the past, a threat to Trinidad and Tobago's survival. Take your blasted knee off of the necks of the people, and we must insist upon it. Not that they will do it voluntarily. No, they have donkeys to ride, and they believe that we are donkeys and they will ride us. We must reverse it on them and make them understand that we know about motorcar, and donkeys are obsolete, and of course they are totally Jurassic. You see how they take away all of the laptops? Jurassic.
I raised in the Parliament on the 16th of May 2022.
Let's listen to another dimension, so you'll get apart from that lawyer, you'll get a better understanding now of Munilal's very articulate, of course, and understanding of the circumstance. Let's listen to Munilal at this stage.
Senator Mark, I want to indicate that this is the complete report on the OS. I have it in my hand here. This is the report. We have had the opportunity to read this about 3 or 4 times. So we have studied the report now. On the day of the 16th of May, the opposition and myself came to the Parliament and raised this matter. I want to remind the country that if on that day I had taken a cup of sleepy tea and I did not awake in time, to this day this country would not have known of the OS NIDCO arbitration. If for any reason I was not in the Parliament, today this country would not have known. We had to go in the closet and drag Keith Rowley out of the closet on this matter. The date on this is April the 16th. April the 16th. 1 month later, this country never knew about this. Never knew. And if on that day I had something else to do, the country would still would not know. When we raised this in the Parliament, the government took a vow of silence. Nothing, absolutely nothing. 10 days later, Rowley goes on the platform and he blames the last administration for this. $1 billion ruling against the government. This ruling of the arbitrators have nothing to do with bankruptcy. Has nothing to do with bankruptcy or even insolvency. This has to do with a breach of contract, that you wrongfully terminated the contract. It doesn't have anything to do with whether OS went bankrupt or not. In fact, OS has never been declared as bankrupt. In Brazil, they were undergoing what they call in their jurisdiction judicial reorganization. But the report says, this report, when you read it, they continue to work in Trinidad. They continued with the project in Trinidad. And I will just go to a couple small areas in the report. It's a very long report that we encourage persons to get their hands on and read. And they say here on page 80, the central issue in this case is whether NIDCO's termination of the contract was valid. And depending on that issue, whether any party is entitled to damage, and if so, how much. That is the issue. There's no other issue. And when they looked at all the submissions, all the material coming out of hearing and so on, they concluded they concluded that NIDCO unlawfully, wrongfully terminated the contract.
That's right.
It is here. And there are two matters that are hilarious, but they are very serious. Because we are dealing with $1 billion. One, NIDCO went under an arbitration and said part of the problem is that they never wrote to us personally. The contract says you must inform the employer of any decision to stop work or slow down work. NIDCO actually went on international tribunal and said, well, they didn't tell us personally. They sent a letter to the engineer and copied to us. They carried an argument like that. The arbitrator said, hello, once you are informed whether they copy the letter to you or write you the letter, you have been informed. What nonsense. NIDCO then argues, as the Prime Minister is seeking.
Remember when Rowley lawyer sent a letter to try to take away the license to take away the license of 104.7, the station. For years I have been calling Rowley a rapist and a pedophile, but they copy Rowley too. They copy Rowley when they send that letter. Will Rowley go say in court that he didn't get a letter, he wasn't aware, because it's on the basis partially on that of that letter. I am saying he's a liar, and I've taken him to court right now at the level, of course, of the pre-action, but the court matter has not yet been filed. I just have to talk to dot the I's and cross the T's by certain persons more expert than me to make certain that I have everything in a package. But the point I'm making is that it having been copied to him, does he have a defense that he didn't know nothing about it because it wasn't sent directly to him? No, Rowley, when they go to court, tell them that is your lawyer, and they never copied, and you never saw sight of that letter that they sent to TAT to try to close down the Amal 104.7 radio station. It's the same thing here. They send a letter to the engineer and copy NIDCO, and NIDCO is saying no, they didn't tell us that they slowing down or they getting out. Of course, at the same time, as I told you, Rowley was saying that some thing come over him, and he come out of the bathroom and he called the PS to find out if they're leaving. And all. That time he don't know that they intended not to pay the people and them, and the people and them had no choice because people were subcontractors and employees were coming down on them. It was a total mess. First chaos that Dr. Rowley created, and therefore right through they either create the mess or the creation or the chaos come on them, and they manipulate it in order, of course, to get an unfair advantage to themselves. Whether it's a thief or to disperse of assets or to gain some political advantage at the polls.
To do that, OS abandoned the job. They abandoned the highway. You know what the report says? This says the government did not pay OS for 3 to 6 months of work and outstanding bills to the tune of $32 million United States dollars. You were owing the company $32 million United States dollars in what is called interim payment certificates and so on. You did not pay. And when the government changed in September 2015, until December that year, they did not pay. So, OS, according to the contractual arrangements, what they did is slow down work. They never abandoned. In law, there's a process that allows a contractor to slow down work when they have stopped the job. And OS continued. The ruling says that the OS did not abandon the job.
When we came into government, we met the highway to Point 14 stopped. When we came into government, we met the highway to Point 14 stopped. When we came into government, we met the highway to Point 14 stopped.
This has to do with the contract, that you wrongfully terminated the contract. It doesn't have anything to do with whether OS went bankrupt or not. In fact, OS has never been declared as bankrupt. In Brazil, they were undergoing what they call in their jurisdiction. But the report says, this report, when you read it, they continue to work in Trinidad. They continued with the project in Trinidad. They say here on page 80, the central issue in this case is whether NIDCO's termination of the contract was valid.
Let's go straight to the line. Of course, we'll take a final call. I thought I would have gotten through the entire thing. We're just about a few seconds again. Pleasant good night. Welcome on this late night edition of the Corridor Transformation. I'm going until this particular matter finished because I have another piece to play tomorrow when he was, of course, recently shifting his tongue and saying something totally different or adding to the nonsense that he spoke before. Pleasant good night. Welcome. Pleasant good night. Welcome. Pleasant good night. Yes.
I just want to add something to that. Yeah,
go ahead. Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Right. I just want to add to that story. You know, I didn't go to AS. You must know how this story don't start from numerous overtime to 12 hours, from 12 hours to 8 hours, from 8 hours to 2 hours, from 2 hours to no hours. That is how it started, that is how it ends.
So you know now what yeah. So the first so what I'm saying, for the first time you know what really caused it. It was Rowley and they who stopped paying the people and them, so they had to adapt and adjust. And that is why you found yourself and the people, your colleagues found themselves in that situation. Hello?
Because what's turning up? When I tell you again, I couldn't breathe at that time. Imagine you working in a location, the sun blazing like on the day in these days. Or that past, like I will say, I work in baby, and if I have workers working in the creek, and rain fall on the creek, who working table against sunrise through the corner rain up there too. So there we get realized by something wrong. Because we have something work in the different thing of the area, you know, because the other side, which is on the creek, fire, sweet side there, you know. So we know something bad was happening.
Yeah, that's what happened.
We didn't know exactly what it was.
Well, you know now from the arbitration, yeah. Yes, that's what has happened. So you know exactly what has transpired.
People feel such a change was the
No, it was that OAS matter, yeah. Yeah, that's the chaos that they created in order to have the pernicious way and have the audacity to come in people's face and exploiting the fact that they had to pay what they ought to have been paying OAS so that they could pay their address their expenditures and those who they would have been owing. Yeah. It's sad, but it's a reality. And Dr. Rowley and them will pay the price. Must pay the price. Yeah. Yeah. But listen to the end. Yeah. But listen to the end of Munilal and you will see where the possibility exists that Ole may well get paid. Yeah. I want those of you who are still to be paid, listen to what the decision of the arbitrators in favor of OS, the implications for you. Listen, let's take this call as a final call. I really want to finish now. Pleasant good night. Welcome to this late edition. Pleasant good night. Yes.
Somebody gonna pay, but it doesn't pay them. It'll be you and me. And according to Dr. Rowley, a great grandchild gonna pay for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember you were here a similar arbitration.
Yeah.
With the boat that was supposed to come here, but it goes down.
Yeah.
And the inspection it wasn't built according to plan. And the UNC put that into action. Those people had to pay $1 million, right? Because of day breach.
Yeah.
But the opposite here now, you know.
Yeah. We a ruthless ignoramus. Yeah, simpletons that have an incompetence have invaded our government. Yeah. That's right. All right. Thank you. Yes, indeed. Let's go straight, of course, to completion. I want you to listen to what Mulal has to say. Finally, I think it will have some respect for some of you who believe that you have been shortchanged, but you know now who caused it. Rowley and their malicious intent for political narrow-minded and narrow political advantage, simply because they controlled the treasury at that point in time. It a set of madmen who, of course, believe power in the intoxication of power and making them mad.
And depending on that issue, whether any party is entitled to damage, and if so, how much? That is the issue. There's no other issue. And when they looked at all the submissions, all the material coming out of hearing and so on, they concluded that NIDCO unlawfully, wrongfully terminated the contract. It is here. You know what the report says? This says the government did not pay OS for 3 to 6 months of work and outstanding bills to the tune of 32 million United States dollars. You were owing the company 32 million United States dollars in what is called interim payment certificates and so on. You did not pay. And when the government changed in September 2015, until December that year, they did not pay. So, OS, according to the contractual arrangements, what they did is slow down work. They never abandon. In law, there's a process that allows a contractor to slow down work when they have not been paid.
And I want to tell you, of course, Mulal went on to say that the implication is that not only would they have to pay the arbitration for the with respect to the contract itself, but all the people that were not paid and the interest on top of that, who OAS was owing, all the subcontracts and so on, will also have to be addressed. So it's not just the bond. That was the bond that OAS had put up to get back that, but it has further legal implications when that would have been settled, and OAS could now use that to pursue a course of action against the government for outstanding monies that they were owing essentially to contractors and workers. So there you have it, people. That's just one aspect. There is more. Tomorrow, of course, we will continue with this, but I thought I should finish this aspect of it. And therefore, of course, we could only say with a Rowleyan government, the ship could only sink.
But not stop the job. And OS continued. The ruling says that the OS did not abandon the job.
That is what they said, indeed.
Yes, we gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it and perish slow? SOS, SOS, mayday, mayday, mayday. Help! Help! The Trinidad, a luxury liner, sailing the Caribbean Sea. My blood crawl, things start to fall.
Yes, people, of course, well, we have come to the end of a very protracted one. Check is now, 14 minutes past 11 o'clock. So just minutes away from 12 o'clock. But, of course, we are committed, we are dedicated, and therefore I thought it was important, of course, to share that with you because it's so significant for people who, of course, will now get up later or sometime when it is recorded. Of course, they can pull it down, upload it, and of course, look at it for persons who would normally look at the program or view the program after we would have completed. Well, they have a long look tonight, and of course, some very solid facts that cannot be refuted, and of course, it's very important as well as we move to the international segment and tracking, of course, international leaders as to what is going for government in Trinidad and Tobago. A bunch of criminals, a bunch of gangsters, a bunch of badge on, as some people would like to say, in government, who are prepared, of course, to jeopardize their own citizens and take away, dispossess them, because they simply have the power so to do. And that, to me, is behavior similar to what we saw with the Nazis and Hitler in Germany. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And of course, have a wonderful tomorrow as well. And don't forget, yes, I'll be there short, because I have some legal matters to deal with, but certainly on the ground report from 6 o'clock, Andy, Mikey, and myself. Let's hope that Andy give me a chance to talk early. If not, of course, I think by 8 o'clock I should be out of where I can have communication. Let me put it that way. That being as it may, have a wonderful rest of the night. And of course, we have a duty to resurface, revive, resuscitate, rekindle Trinidad and Tobago from this Bermudian bunch of opportunist political parasites who are dead and determined to sing Trinidad and Tobago.
Hold me head when I sail a ball, Captain, this ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? We don't know, we don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Whoa, whoa. Now there's a lot of fingers pointing, suspicion running, to be blamed for all her failures. Who's to be blamed for doing her wrong? Now please remember, I'm warning you, for 30 years she had the same crew who hold the keys to her vault. So we know who's at fault. Now it's up to you, it's up to me, to make her worthy to go back to sea. Captain, the ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? Captain, this ship is sinking.
Wow.